Rebecca Enonchong, founder of AppsTech and reigning queen of tech, of African tech, but some say tech in general. Welcome back to the African Tech Roundup.
Thanks, Andile. I love that title, the reigning queen of tech. Yeah, nobody's going to take my crown away.
As long as you're here, we're happy to basically let the people know, man.
Yeah.
We're at the AfroBytes Tech Conference, and it's your second year in a row. Again, a pleasure to hear you speak on a panel. You were tackling this year the issue of policy and its role in engendering a workable environment for African tech to thrive on the continent. How optimistic are you feeling about Africa's tech industry?
Oh my goodness, I'm an entrepreneur, right? So we are always optimistic. We know for a fact that tomorrow is better than today. And so absolutely, I'm very optimistic. Also realistic, right? Because there are challenges for our ecosystem, and we need to address those challenges, but they're not going to prevent us from thriving and succeeding.
Okay, so if you followed for any period of time the hashtag bring back our internet, round about the time Cameroon decided to switch it off for, over 3 months, you would have seen Rebecca's activism around this issue. In fact, I think I was on your Twitter page just the other day. It's still there?
Yeah, it's still there because I don't want to forget. You know, I think my background image is still the bring back our internet hashtag, the logo, because I don't want us to forget. Because it's happening now. It's happening in Ethiopia, and it will continue to happen across the African continent if we don't come together and stand together as we did. As I saw all of Africa come together behind the Bring Back Our Internet hashtag. And we need to continue to come together for other government internet shutdowns.
What's at stake if our policymakers, our lawmakers, and citizens who don't realize that they have the power to make a difference by standing up? What happens if we don't prevent this mindset of internet equals social media equals revolution? If we let that mindset sort of ferment and set in the minds of our leaders, corporate leaders, government leaders, what's at stake, Rebecca?
Well, what's at stake is that we'll have more internet shutdowns, is that people will think that an internet shutdown, even if it's temporary, is okay. It's not okay. It's not okay even for 10 seconds to shut down the internet if you have any hope for developing a digital economy. And so we can't let it happen. And I think Ed Snowden, who chimed in during the Bring Back Our Internet, said it best. He said, if it happens there, it will happen here. So don't think it's not going to happen to you. So when the internet is shut down anywhere in the world, we need to stand together and say no. We're particularly interested in Africa, and so we want to make sure that all Africans understand that it's not okay to shut down the internet for a moment. It's not okay for the government to shut it down for a moment. I think Ethiopia shut it down for exams because they don't want cheating in exams. That's unacceptable. There are other ways to police exam cheating than shutting down the internet. The consequences of an internet shutdown aren't just that people can't access the internet for a given moment. The consequence is lost jobs. The biggest consequence is lack of trust. Is you lose trust in an economy, because whether or not Cameroon, I'm using that as an example, realizes it, is that they shut down the internet in the English-speaking parts of the country because they didn't want people in the English-speaking parts of the country to access social media. But they cut off all of the internet, not just the social media. But the consequence is that investors that are looking to invest in Cameroon aren't going to say, oh, they shut it down in the English-speaking part, but I'm going to invest in the French-speaking part. They don't think that way. They're thinking, here's a country and here's a government that is ready to shut down the internet. And so I cannot put my money in such an economy because it's too risky. And Ethiopia, it's the same thing. Here is a country that thinks that there's a solution to a problem is to shut down the internet. It's not a solution because it creates this additional risk profile for a country. And we are in dire need of investment. We're in dire need of trust. It's such an important element. And if people cannot trust that the government will not shut down the internet, then it's a lot more difficult to start to talk about a digital economy.
The reason I take very seriously your views and your opinions, idealistic opinions and views on matters such as this is because you put your money where your mouth is. You refuse to let these issues determine whether or not you're going to execute on your plan to make Africa, or to basically act on your belief that Africa is and continues to be the greatest opportunity of our time economically. And I want you to speak to that because I feel that's an entrepreneurial trait found in many entrepreneurs. I myself being from Zimbabwe, you can think of a million reasons not to act based on perhaps what you might perceive your government doing for you or not, or doing enough, or to say nothing of being a foreign national living in South Africa. And I mean, there's so many things, so many reasons why entrepreneurs, startup founders, VC interests, institutional investors could point to for not acting on their conviction that Africa is an amazing place to do business. Speak to what you're doing, practically doing, in terms of like, okay, Cameron over there, see you, you're in my sort of peripheral. I see you over there, Ethiopia, can't stand it, but got to do this thing.
Yeah, I think, it's so important for us to be part of the solution. We can't sit and complain. We have to do something. And doing something starts with being on the ground and putting, as you said, putting your money where your mouth is and saying, okay, it's going to be hard, but I have to do this because I want to shape the way my digital economy will look. And if I'm not there, I can't shape it. Somebody else is going to shape it, and there's not going to look anything like what I would like it to look like. And so I have to participate. And by participating, I have a voice and I can speak loudly. And I do feel like one person can have an impact. And so one person plus one person plus one person, we can transform the continent. I really, really believe that. I want to cite to this juncture, the work you do with and for the African Business Angels Network. Why is that specifically, in your mind, at least to my mind, one of the more important initiatives that you've thrown your weight behind, not just as a co-founder or an active member of, but also an active investor within the Africa's tech industry? For so many years we've worked with startups to support them, to help them be a viable business, to make them investment ready for other investors outside of Africa. But we need Africans to invest in Africans. And that's why ABAN is so important, because it serves as a kind of catalyst to find and identify some of these potential angel investors, get them to start angel groups, train them on what angel investing is all about, just really promote the whole idea of angel investment, seed funding for and early stage funding for startups in Africa by Africans.
How do you think in some of the most profound ways approaching angel investment on the continent is different to being in that space in a more developed economy like, say, the States or in Europe somewhere?
Well, from a very practical standpoint, we don't have exits, right? So we have very few exits. So I think from angels, it exit to VCs, right? So what we're looking for as angel investors, because investment, guys, it's not charity. is a company that will potentially get VC funding. And if a company can potentially get VC funding, then the angel can exit, even though the company hasn't exited. We can make money that way. So we just have to look at angel investing a little bit differently. Obviously, some of the due diligence will be different, more extensive. You'll find that it's like most angel investors, they'll invest locally. Even though they may have a Pan-African vision, they want to see the entrepreneurs and see and make sure that they're actually doing what they said they were going to do. What we've seen as a model that's interesting is putting angel investor groups and tying them in with incubators, so that those startups that the angels decide to invest in are incubated. It's easier to follow up, and easier to, so there's somebody looking at the bank account. There's somebody looking to make sure and monitoring on a day-to-day basis how that startup is evolving, versus, angels who are generally busy and will spend, a few hours a month with the startup entrepreneurs.
Is syndication in this space becoming a thing? Because I remember speaking to Tommy Davies a short while ago, actually, at a recent event, and him talking about how that's also a key focus, or at least in his mind, one of the main things that needs to start to happen within local regions, say, in local geographic regions, but also across the continent. How's the syndication thing going?
I think it's wow. I think, Tommy, that's a great example of it. Our big brothers, we always call them the Big Brother land, the Lagos Angels Network. There's several syndications that are ongoing. So they have a lot more experience with it. Tommy, obviously, sharing that experience with the rest of us. It's starting. I think it's evolving. First, people need to understand what angel. I think one of the issues is that it's still so new in everybody's mind. The whole idea of being an angel investor, our uncles, our aunts, or whatever that have funded startups, not knowing that they were angel investors. We need to get more of them, and we need to structure them more. Structuring them in a syndication, in an angel group, it doesn't matter. They just need more structure. And I think we're so early stage right now in that whole, we are 2010 tech hub, right? That's where we are right now with angel groups, with the whole seed investment movement, is that we're only now structuring it and helping structure these networks. And I think then, it'll take a few years for us to really see the impact, but the impact will be there. Because as soon as Africans start believing in Africans, investing in Africans, we will transform the continent.
I do believe that. Two things I want us to talk about, then I obviously have to let you go because you're a busy lady today. We share a bugbear in the whole perception of Africa being a sort of charity destination. And caught up in that whole thing is this idea of impact investment, which inherently shouldn't be an issue, but kind of is because of really what it's come to be associated with and how it's applied to charity drives. Okay, so give me a sense of why this annoys you, clearly far more than I, and how we fix it.
Okay, first of all, what is impact, right? Who defines impact? I believe that job creation, wealth creation is impact. A lot of these impact investors don't. Do you know that more than 80% of this impact investment into Africa doesn't actually go to African founded organizations or companies? That is a huge issue. Because who decides? So you have this white savior complex of people that go in to create these, impact type businesses. They're getting millions and millions and millions of dollars in investment, which is almost grants, competing against local entrepreneurs that have a more profit-driven approach that aren't getting the investment. And so I really think in some respects that it's actually hurting rather than helping the economies.
And so the social capitalist side of me that says, okay, so let's be pragmatic about impact and this idea that even when the intention isn't right, or we don't trust motive, or really there's a problematic systematic development of habits and precedent that we're setting through not teaching our local entrepreneurs to base their sort of startup endeavors on commercial fundamentals. Great, there's all of that, but
and that's not enough for you.
No, but there's the fact that, well, I mean, there are people out there who would never have the internet on any given Sunday if it wasn't for free basics. I mean, come on.
Oh my god! I can't believe you just said that.
I'm playing devil's advocate so hard right now.
Yeah. Okay. You know what?
Or wouldn't have like their shack lit up if it wasn't for, say, initiatives like Mkopa, for example.
Okay, you know what? Then I'm fine with that. Just call it charity, right? And let's just finish with it. Just say that this is a grant, and say that you are, donating money. It's a philanthropic type of model, and I'm fine with it.
To be fair to Mkopa, who I cite here, of course, they've come out saying, listen, we've got like the burgers is the lights and stuff and the solar, the sort of underlying the McDonald's, to use the McDonald's analogy, the land around the restaurant, and everything is actually this finance business we're trying to build by giving people free lighting and tracking their activities and stuff like that. So, all right. So anyway, back to you.
Yeah. See, I'm not gonna. I don't want to go there. I really don't want to go there. I don't want to go there.
So all I can say is you should wish you were at Afrobytes. If you weren't at Afrobytes this year, you need to be at the next one, which I hope they have to invite you back to be a panelist then.
I hope so too. This is actually a really cool event.
Pretty awesome, right? Because I mean, again, you were very candid on stage about, Facebook specific in this case, where they're not being upfront about like, yes, you say you're saving the world and you're fronting, but maybe if you were a little more honest about the motive, which is to basically dominate world tech. I mean, maybe if we were onto that and you were honest about it, we'd be less ticked off about it.
Can we talk about Andile?
Let's talk about that a little bit. Well, yeah, it used to be an African company, I think.
Well, ouch. You know what? I love Andile. I love what they're doing. And I'm so glad that they got the investment from Mark. I just wish it came from Mark and not something called foundation, something called, if it didn't have this philanthropy bent on it, then I would love it. I'm really saddened that, the initiative, the Zuckerberg initiative is the vehicle that they use to invest, because I really would like to see Mark and others in the Valley see Africa as what it is, a huge market, a huge investment opportunity, and not just a charity case.
Well, to all of you Mark Zuckerberg-esque Silicon Valley people.
Because, of course, he's listening to you, right? And
do you think he is?
Oh, he has to. He came to Nigeria. Wasn't that cool? That was the best.
That was pretty cool.
And I think what's really great about that is that he saw Nigeria and he saw Africa for himself versus what people are going to describe about it. And the energy, you cannot help but be impacted by the energy that you get out of the continent and out of the continent's entrepreneurs. And all of a sudden you realize like, oh, wow. These are amazing, amazing people, and I'm sure his life will be transformed forever. And
of course, Kenya will be like, hey, he came over too. Yes, yeah. Kenya and Nigeria, gotcha.
Yeah. But he didn't come to Cameroon, so that didn't count.
Snap.
I'm tired of Kenya. Kenya's always been, it's like our big brother also. See, I see Nigeria as the big brother of actually doing stuff. Oh, this is
ouch.
You should edit that one out. No, I'm just kidding. But no, Kenya is like, everybody always talk about Kenya. And it takes the focus off of Kenyan startup entrepreneurs. There's a real story in Kenya, and that's that there are companies, there are entrepreneurs there and startups there that are local based, that aren't getting millions of dollars in funding, and that are actually involved in and interested in doing business. But nobody talks about them, because every time you talk about an African startup, especially when you're talking about Kenya, you have to talk about social impact. Why are African startups given this additional criteria of showing how much social impact they're generating?
Meanwhile, in South Africa, where there's far less of an emphasis on that, you're seeing listed company after listed company snap up, really handy businesses that have been doing the business, for like significant sums of money. I mean, that's happened at least 2 or 3 times this year alone. Quite niche plays in an area that would never trend in sort of foreign media, and just again goes to show that there is business being done, and maybe we should focus on that. And even on the show, we really do try, but I mean, we certainly can try harder to focus on the money being made and the impact in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the more stories we hear of successful African businesses that aren't just pretty for the media, because I think what happens also is that the entrepreneur falls into this kind of, I want my story to be media friendly, and so their business starts to focus on what media wants to read about, and so you make it sexy, but you don't make it profitable.
And also, when you tell your story, people coming behind you don't know what it actually takes to succeed.
Yeah, so I think really let's start focusing on how can we make money, how can we create jobs, and to build out our economy. And let the impact people do what they do, and that's fine. But let's really, us Africans, let's really focus on building sustainable, profitable businesses.
Now you really have to go. And I know how one question turns into like 10 minutes with us. So really quickly. So you sat down for this killer interview. You have to plug it again. Go check out African Tech Conversations. Search for my conversation with Rebecca Enonchong. Just put that in Google. You'll find it. Incredible story. Look, you told that story at a time when it was unthinkable for anyone, never mind an individual like you or heading up a company like AppsTech, which is nothing to sneeze at, of course, but it was unthinkable of someone in your position to insist on all of us taking big business like MTN, and specific to this case, to much greater account in terms of what they're doing to promote, or in your case, or in your specific case, to basically really hamstring the growth of African tech. And we cite MTN and other big businesses. I think Naspers is one I would mention, just in terms of size. The banks, certainly, the other large mobile telcos. These guys are big scale players in a position to really make a difference in terms of leveraging their legacy weight behind smaller tech that's coming up and coming. And you stood out and said, these guys are up to nonsense. They've taken me for a ride. And then we see like a diabolical 18 months thereafter or so. Sure, I'm not saying it's all you, queen of African tech, but what do you make of the fallout since then, a place like MTN, and what does it say about, perhaps in a good way, about our ecosystem?
The accountability. They've gotten away with so much for so long, but in the end, the real personality of an individual, and in this case of a company, always emerges. And some of these companies, MTN amongst them, but they're not alone, that sponsor these startup challenges, that they're saying they're reinvesting and they're talking about CSR, but they don't pay their suppliers, or they treat their business partners, they treat their employees badly. Or they don't participate fully in the ecosystem. They don't pay their taxes. So, if you're going to break the rules because you think you can get away with it, whether it's in dealing with any of the stakeholders, you're not supporting that economy and you're not supporting the ecosystem. I would much rather that you pay your suppliers that can then go, that's building out the ecosystem, because those suppliers are generating jobs, they're paying employees, and that is how you support the ecosystem. Spending $1,000 to go build a water well, when the people that from that community you haven't been honest with or direct with, could be building their own well with the wealth that you're taking away from them. So taking away from one entity to then pretend that you're doing something positive is not acceptable. And I don't know why people are so afraid of government.
Well, we're less afraid, and that's why I sort of it was a leading question in that I feel like we are less afraid. And I think, look, we're not all the way there yet, and I'm not saying, you clearly haven't gotten your money back, have you?
No, not yet, but I'm working on it.
So the bets aren't off there, but I mean, you haven't certainly got them to pay on what they owe you. Yeah. But we are seeing them pay in ways that would have been unthinkable before, because they're being held to account. To credit to policymakers, lawmakers, who are regulators, who are like going, actually, this is how we're going to roll. Shout out to Nigeria, to Rwanda. TZ's doing it. So I mean, and not just MTN either. The banks are getting it. So South Africa's got its thing with laws coming online, citizenry getting more involved. That's what I sort of meant as a leading question. I feel like it's turning a bit.
Yeah, I think that once Nigeria started, all of a sudden they weren't invincible anymore, right? Big corps weren't invincible. And it was like, okay, wow, we can actually hold them accountable. And this is a whole new reality for these companies. Is like, all of a sudden we really have to look at how we do business. We're not going to be able to just write a check, a small check to individuals, or to get the problem, to have the problem go away. This is going to take real institutional change.
I'm sure mining companies never dreamed they'd have to compete for that kind of heat, in terms of
and the oil, right? Oil
and gas
and mining, right? They're competing against tech, against these very large companies.
In terms of just getting us in terms of really just having to prove to us that they aren't here to ruin our continent.
Yeah, I absolutely. And I think that, with the amount of money that MTN has made on the continent itself, not talking about, the Middle East and in other places that they're now involved in, but you almost look at MTN and you look at where they want to invest. They really invest in bad areas that nobody else wants to invest in. And that should be something that these African governments look at. In other words, if you are bad investment environments, invite bad investors.
Wow, but Rebecca, flip, man, the impact though.
So if MTN were called ABC, would they create fewer jobs?
Oh my word. Okay.
So if it was a local company, would it create fewer jobs? I think that what creates the jobs and what creates the wealth is the fact that there is a telco. But you can call the telco whatever you want, and it could have been a locally based telco. Remember, MTN and its competitors, they are funded in Cameroon anyway, entirely by local banks. So South Africa put zero money, right? And MTN South Africa put very, very little money into that. And they're very proud to say there's zero risk, 100% financed by local banks. And so those local banks could have funded, ABC instead of MTN, and you would have had the same amount of jobs, the same amount of impact, and perhaps less of the arrogance.
Wow. Sure. Always a flip side to every coin, and trust Rebecca Enonchong to show us the other side, right?
I'm not trying to be negative. I think that these companies do have a huge impact. I think in South Africa, MTN has had a huge impact, but I don't want us to overstate their value in other economies as MTN. Their value as a telco in those other countries is what we need to look at.
Yeah, this is what we're here for, man, to have these tough conversations. We have to have them. They're inconvenient. We don't necessarily always have to agree, but we need to bring the stuff to the surface, skim that top and move on. But always appreciated to have you on the show because you enlarge our territory, man.
So, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited that you guys are here in Paris.
It's incredible. First time. Also the weather, though.
Oh, come on. It's nice.
It's incredible is what I mean.
Okay. Yeah. For once. For once in Paris, the weather is good.
So, yes, shout out to Amin, Hawea, and the rest of the team at AfroBytes really for setting this up. And the gravity of it being hosted here at MIDEF, it's like ridiculous, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm so impressed and amazed at what they've been able to pull off. MIDEF is the center of business in France and a very important player in Europe altogether. Their impact on Africa is also something that you should ask one of them about in one of your interviews, because most of the investments in especially Francophone Africa come from companies that are members of MIDEF. And so you need to have that conversation.
I will do so.
Thank you so much for having me.
Indeed, it was our pleasure. Thanks, Rebecca.
I'm super fan.